Let's start with the roll call. Priscilla Smith is absent. Eric's here. Marcia's here. Rachel's absent. Ned is present. We also have Liz Lingo and Glenn Mandalis. Why did that happen? Did I do that?
Did somebody put anything close to a mic?
Okay, any correspondence? No. And approval of minutes?
So moved.
Both?
So these are the April 26th and the May 20, 2019 minutes.
Indeed, they've been read.
Second it.
Oh, I was recused for one of them, so.
You're not able to vote on one of them? If you're not able to vote on one of them, then we should take just
At one at a time.
Yeah.
I think April 26th.
The April 26th, I wasn't there.
Okay, well, I will second on the 26th, but can we do that with two people?
So you're recusing on the, I mean, you just need a majority of the present. You have a quorum present, so as long as you have the more majority, so you can do it. It's kind of, he's recused.
Absent for minutes.
He's recused, but he's still present for purposes of quorum, so you can do that, yes.
Okay, so I guess that passes?
So your motion second passed. Yep.
Okay, and then the meeting on May 20th.
Move that we pass it?
I recuse, I wasn't there, but obviously can pass.
Marcia, you were there?
I
So
had to recuse. I was present, but
recused on part of that application. Or part of that meeting, that's right. We might have to hold those ones in.
Can we hold it to see if Rachel shows up?
Yes, let's do that.
any old business? And before we get to new business, my husband is a commissioner, but that will not influence any of my decisions. So, the first appeal, we have to do names. Jan,
To do address.
Royal Builders on behalf of Geno Vento, property at 510 Lee Street.
Okay.
Appeal the denial of a tree removal permit and any planting requirements. So I guess Liz is up.
Okay, and keep in mind, this one got moved from last time, so that's why my dates are old on there. The following is the report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced appeal that is to be heard before the commission on Monday, June 24th, 2019. The appeal today is a request to remove 10 trees and determine any required planting. There is one previous permit associated with the new home construction.
That rarely happens in here.
That's happened to me like one other time and all the times I've been up here. Anyways, I'll restart. There is one previous permit associated with the new home construction on this lot issued January 18th, 2019. Okay. Issued January 18th, 2019, permit number 19520. There was 36 inches of mitigation required and met by the existing trees on site. There was also a minimum density planting requirement of 1 tree in the front yard setback. The new permit, application number 1026, proposes the removal of 3 12-inch diameter mulberries, 4 6 to 12 inch Leland cypress, 1 10-inch sassafras line tree, and 1 16-inch evergreen. With the exception of 1 mulberry, the trees are in fair to good health and are located in the setbacks. If these trees are removed, there would be no additional mitigation beyond the previous 36 inches. However, as this would clear the lot, there would be 5 trees required for minimum density. Those 5 trees plus 36 inches of mitigation equals a planting requirement of 17 3-inch diameter trees. For the 5 minimum density trees, 1 must be in the front yard setback, and there is a maximum of 1 evergreen and 2 small species permitted. Those trees and the 12 mitigation trees must be native species and have a minimum size of 3-inch caliper, 12 feet tall. As per City Code 253-36, the Park and Shade Tree Commission hears and decides appeals. C, authority of the Park and Shade Tree Commission. The Park and Shade Tree Commission shall have authority to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged that there is an error in any decision made by the building inspector on an application for a tree removal permit or land clearing permit. In exercising its authority, the Park and Shade Tree Commission may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify the building inspector's decision. Additionally, the Park and Shade Tree Commission has the authority to order a fee in lieu of mitigation. That's it.
I'm not sure I understand factually what this one, because, so back in January, there's a permit that was issued, and they had to have 36 inches of mitigation, but there was already 36 inches on the lot of existing trees.
Yeah.
So now, the sentence I don't understand is when you say, you talk about the new trees that are proposed to come down, and then you say, if these trees were removed, there would be no additional mitigation beyond the previous 36 inches.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means that the previous permit, so the new trees are not specimens. Horrible. So the trees remaining are not. It's working. You got it turned off. Sounds great. Test 1 2 3. Test. We're good to proceed? Okay, so to answer your question, the new trees that they're proposing for removal are not specimens. They don't require any mitigation, but the previous still stands. So that's why we still have 36 inches. So if they had applied for all the trees at once to remove everything, the requirement will be 5 trees for minimum density and 36 inches of mitigation.
Okay. So because they had the 36 inches of mitigation trees before, you can't then use those again this time when new trees come.
There's no trees left.
Gotcha.
I have a question on lime trees. I didn't think that was permitted to take down a lime tree.
With permission of the co-owner, that would be a condition of a permit being issued.
And we're looking at a sassafras tree as a trash tree.
I did not say a trash tree anywhere in there. I just said
know you
they're
didn't, but
proposing to
that's-
removal.
That's the inference to me.
They're generally like an early colonizer. You see them a lot in newer woods, kind of as your first growth tree. They're not typically a landscape planted tree.
Butterflies love them.
So do they have a planning plan to,
No, I don't know if anybody's here to represent them, but they did say they'd be willing to plant whatever.
We're willing to.
Can you give your name for the record and?
Sikueland from Royal Builders,
Thanks.
representing Geno Vento. We are willing to,
Could you repeat that because it wasn't on?
Jan Sikueland from Royal Builders. This is Geno Vento, the homeowner. Mr. Vento is more than willing to accommodate any recommendation Liz makes on mitigation, on what's needed to make everything right. And plant 17 3-inch trees, I believe you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it finalizes as.
He's just looking to neaten things up because a lot of the trees they haven't been pruned through the years, and they've taken on wild, weird shapes. And with his swimming pool, and he wants to install a new fence, and he'd like to rather take them down, put in a nice fence, and plant things in a straight line and further apart so they're not fighting each other up towards the sun to grow straight and look attractive.
So if I understood you correctly, see on the tree permit application, it says number of trees to be removed, 10.
Yes.
And it says number of trees to remain on property will replant. So are you saying you're perfectly willing to, not contesting, appealing, planting the recommended 17? Is that? No what?
No, we're not going to contest her recommendation of planting 17 3-inch caliber or diameter trees. He wants trees for privacy, for shade. He just would like something more aesthetically pleasing and neater, and not so much mess coming into his future swimming pool.
I guess I'm not clear then, because is there actually an appeal if what you're recommending is what they're agreeing to do? Is there anything
It's
that's
not my recommendation. So the trees are not unhealthy is how I want to put it. They're not great. Obviously it was landscape choice of the Leland cypress, and I think most people who plant them regret them. And the mulberries are classified as an invasive species. So I think he just kind of wants a clean slate to landscape his yard. By the code, that's not a reason to allow tree removal. That's why we're here.
I see.
Yeah, I misspoke when I said her recommendation. I didn't mean it was her recommendation to remove them and plant new ones. I was just meaning her of what would need to be
I
replaced.
see.
Right, so you're appealing the denial of the permit
Yes,
because you want to take down the 10 trees.
Yes,
And if that's reversed, then you're willing, obviously, you're going to comply with the
Absolutely.
statute.
Right. And so they're fine with doing 17 3-inch trees, but they're not the trees that she would recommend, right?
I don't have a planting plan. So, I mean, this would be the time for them if they wanted to request to plant something besides the allowed native species. It'd be here and now, because after we leave here, I can't permit the non-natives,
but we're thinking river birch.
which would be allowed.
No, maybe not 17. We were looking at beech trees as well, so maybe.
Well, sometimes what we do when we discuss these matters is we take a vote if this were to fall in what I'll consider your favors.
Okay.
Since you're appealing, if it were, then we obviously recommend in our minutes to work with the arborist to come up with the trees. But Liz, that would be acceptable to you. We've done that before, correct? I don't wanna speak for you.
The species, as long as you're saying you want them to be on the native species.
Yeah, they'd be subject to your approval, the tree
Yeah,
list.
then the actual plan, they can submit, no, they will have to submit the plan prior to me approving the permit by code.
Yes.
But yeah, so
I
that's no
assume you'd
problem.
be willing to do that.
Absolutely.
Chair willing to entertain a motion?
Certainly.
I move that the permit be reversed and approved, and that they comply, working with the arborist on the appropriate 17 trees.
I'll second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. So we're on 9 St. Lawrence.
All right, we ready then? Yes? 9 St. Lawrence, ready? Papers?
You
Okay.
ready? Okay, we're ready.
All right. The following is the report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced appeal that is to be heard before the commission on Monday, July 22nd, 2018. On May 13, 2019, a tree removal permit application was submitted to remove one 26-inch diameter pine tree located at 9 St. Lawrence Street. The tree is in poor to fair condition with the east half of the canopy dead. For clarification, the permit applicant is the tree owner at 9 St. Lawrence, but the appeal applicant for today's hearing is the neighboring owner of 11 St. Lawrence Street. On May 20th, there was a scheduled on-site inspection with the tree contractor and appeal applicant present. The appeal applicant desired the tree removal and had obtained permission from 9 St. Lawrence Street's estate. And 9 St. Lawrence Street, the 26 inches of mitigation is met by existing trees on site, but the property does not meet the requirements of 253.26 minimum tree density. B, in meeting the density requirements set forth in subsection A1 or 2 above, the following shall apply. 1, evergreen, deciduous, or small specimen trees may be counted to meet the density requirements provided that A, only one evergreen or deciduous trees exceeding 3-inch caliper may be counted. B, only small specimen trees exceeding 2 inches caliper may be counted. C, only one small specimen tree may be counted for each 5,000 square feet. And D, no more than 1/3 of the trees counted towards the density requirements may be evergreens. 3, existing trees and new trees planted according to minimum standards in this article, or a combination of the two, may be counted to meet the density requirements, provided that B, where one or more trees are planted to meet the density requirements, at least one tree, existing or planted, shall be in the front yard, in the front setback area. As per the code, 9 St. Lawrence Street's planting requirements are 2 deciduous trees with a minimum size of 3-inch caliper and 12 foot tall, with 1 tree to be planted in the front yard setback. The appeal applicant and contractor were verbally advised of the planting requirements during the meeting on May 20th. Those requirements were reaffirmed in writing to the contractor, appeal applicant, and permit applicant on May 21st. The permit applicant's contractor submitted a planting plan meeting the requirements that was approved on May 23rd. The permit was issued May 24th and picked up on May 28th. On May 31st, the appeal applicant contacted me regarding concerns of the planting plan. That communication is included in your packet. The appeal applicant felt he could not meet the conditions of the permit, so I advised him to not proceed with the tree removal. I met with the appeal applicant on June 18th to review his options, and he decided to appeal with the intent of planting the required trees on his property instead of the permit applicant's property where the tree removal is occurring, which is 9 St. Lawrence Street. On the appeal applicant's property, 11 St. Lawrence, there are currently no trees. As per City Code, Parks and Shade Tree Commission has authority to hear and decide this appeal. 253-36 Administrative Appeals. Any person aggrieved by a decision involving the grant or denial of an application for a tree removal permit or land clearing permit may appeal to the City Park and Shade Tree Commission. A written notice of appeal must be filed with the city manager within 30 days of the date of the decision, which is the subject of the appeal. C, authority of the Park and Shade Tree Commission. The Park and Shade Tree Commission shall have the authority to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged that there is error in any decision made by the building inspector on an application for a tree removal permit or land clearing permit. In exercising its authority, the Park and Shade Tree Commission may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify the building inspector's decision. Additionally, the Park and Shade Tree Commission has the authority to order a fee and load mitigation.
Questions?
No questions? That was
Well,
okay.
I went and looked at the tree, and usually when you say it's in fair to good, I would say usually it looks like it's half dead, but this tree I thought looked relatively healthy. And I didn't see the east side. It would have been, to me, the west side that was a little shaky, the one that was leaning over the other property.
Yeah, the east side, there's like no canopy. It's just all probably been burned out by salt and wind, nor'easters. The west side is relatively healthy on the tree.
And I didn't walk back there, but from the street, it looked
Yeah, that's why we definitely do a 360 on site on both properties, so we can see everything of the tree.
What do you think of just pruning?
It could be pruned, the dead stuff could be out. I mean, you'd be left with a somewhat unbalanced tree with the excess of weight leaning towards one property that
I'm
didn't
sure
own
if
the tree.
Sussex Tree did it, they would do a beautiful job, and it would be very symmetrical all the way around. But I would think that maybe they need to look at that first.
You would have to go up to the microphone, introduce yourself.
And we had that tree trimmed at our expense some years ago, and they refused to trim the top of the tree because they said it would kill it. And it's the top that's overhanging our bedroom, master bedroom, and we feel it's a danger. In a windstorm, it's going to go that way. There are currently at least 19 trees on that property, which is now being held by an estate, which happened in January. They came under estate. The estate doesn't care if the tree is removed. They don't want the business of taking care of new planted trees on their property, since they already have 19 trees remaining. A 6-inch limb dead limb has fallen onto our property. And to be quite frank with you, it didn't hurt anyone, thank goodness, but it was a large limb that fell, and there are other dead limbs up there, as she pointed out. Do you have any questions of me?
Nope, I guess I should have gotten off my bike and walked back there further.
I have just a procedural question. I'm assuming we have documentation by the executor or person in charge of the estate granting authorization for you to file a permit on their behalf, on their property, on their tree? Is that?
Yeah,
Yes.
they actually included in your packet was the signed permit application from the estate, the representative, George Christopher.
Okay, I couldn't read exactly who that was, but thank you
Yeah,
for that
and
clarification.
I have kept him informed of every stage, including this hearing. I have emails to him that he has acknowledged, and I think,
I can confirm that. He's been on all the
Thanks.
emails.
So here, the way I understand it is, the estate does not want to care for new trees on the property. You're offering to have the trees planted on your property.
I am.
The code is specific to individuals' property where the tree comes down. You're certainly welcomed or encouraged to plant as many trees on your property as is allowed by law. But I don't know that we can authorize trees that are required for one property to be placed on another legally, according to statute. I don't know.
Well, is there really 19 trees on number 9? Yeah, are there really 19 trees, or how many trees are on that?
There were several. I don't recall the exact number. I'd say around 20, give or take a few.
I submitted a complete plan
Yeah, it might be.
through
in there.
Sussex Tree showing showing the map of the trees. And I included it as part of the package to you all,
Yep.
including the write-up that I sent to you all as part of my package.
Can barely see it.
Now, we do allow
By the-
people to plant trees on public property.
Well, what I was going to suggest, as maybe one way of considering it, is that we have used the tree preservation account, I think, in the past to give private property owners trees if we never have, we've talked about it.
No, public,
It was in
the
public.
way
It was in
the
public.
code is written, it's been stated that it's for the planting and preservation of trees on public property.
You could do a technical thing where it's a fee in lieu of mitigation that's awarded, but the fee is given back to plant trees on their own property. Would be one kind of technical way around it, but if it's only public.
So,
Yeah.
That's not possible, it doesn't sound.
Liz, what's your
May I make
recommendation
one
about this
comment here?
pine tree? Do you think it's, obviously you said fair to poor, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't professionally feel any affinity towards the pine tree. I don't think it's one of the best specimens. Whether or not if I was living in either of the houses, would I remove it? I'm not sure.
I want to get to the real root here, and that is, do you feel that as the city arborist, is the tree diseased?
I think it's more dieback from the weather conditions.
Is a tree in danger of, or is it in danger of falling? Is there a probability? What would you say the probability of it?
I would say the way they do it for in the tree world, it would be probable, possible, likely. I'd say it would be possible, but not likely. So I didn't necessarily have an issue with it being removed because there was enough dieback to warrant that. But it's really I can't approve plantings for 9 St. Lawrence to be placed on 11. That's the heart of the issue.
I understand. So I would ask you, if they don't want to care for it and you're the neighbor, this is important to you, does it seem like a reasonable trade for you to care for the 2 saplings the first year or 2 till they take, until the property is sold or whatever the process it takes through the estate? Is that something you've thought about and considered?
Well, my thought was this, and we talked to the estate representative. My thought was this: that property is likely to be sold. There's no one living there now since the Christopher's passed away in January. They don't want the trees, extra trees. They haven't trimmed the trees that are there. The pine tree, if you looked at it, is growing into 8. If you look at the map, which I supplied, the pine tree has a very large limb growing into these, inhibiting and encumbering their growth. It's a real mess. And my thought was, why plant 2 trees, pay for the planting of 2 trees, to have the trees eventually, if the place is sold, and the trees don't add anything to the property. Without taking down trees and doing something like this builder suggested, it wouldn't be logical, in my humble opinion.
I'm just asking the question because we are bound by certain restraints in the code, as is the arborist. So, we're trying to figure out a solution that works according to the statute. So, I suppose we could consider a fee in lieu of mitigation.
You could, but I guess, having seen a lot of these hearings, I sort of feel as though the intent of the code is to ensure there are additional trees and tree canopy and mitigation caliper. And in this instance, where the one lot seems to be very treed already,
Right.
I think you could condition your approval in this instance, because it's the neighbor, which is a unconventional application that comes before you. I think you could probably condition your approval on this applicant. It doesn't typically come to you where it's the neighbor coming to you as the applicant. On this applicant, planning replacement caliper on his lot. It's not a perfect solution, but I think it's more in line with the spirit of the code, which is to replace caliper with
Well,
caliper.
especially since his lot has no trees.
And his lot has no trees.
So,
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, and
Right.
I didn't catch everything.
I said especially since your lot has no trees, that this would be a good solution, to let the tree come down, but you'd plant trees on your property.
Right. If
Well, and I'll plant 2 street trees as well. We do not have any street trees.
No, if there's a legal mechanism, we
I-
can do that.
So, it's sort of like the Planning Commission and other, generally, the law says you can attach reasonable conditions, if it addresses a concern. Here, again, this code is all about this code was put in place to ensure canopy within the city and to promote canopy within the city. Fees in lieu of mitigation, as much as it's nice to go into the account, it doesn't really promote the canopy, especially on a lot that's untreated at this point. So I think there's got to be a mechanism to get to the right result, which is, that tree coming down, it seems, and trees being planted next door. There's already, as he says, that property is likely to redevelop, and who knows what's going to happen to their trees. They have no intention of redeveloping. They want trees, and they're going to promote the growth of those trees. To me, it just seems reasonable.
Yeah, it would meet the spirit of the law.
Right.
I move that we let the applicant take the tree down, number 9, take the tree down on number 9, and submit a planning plan to the arborist to be approved for number 11.
Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's not the perfect result, but I think when you put it all together, it seems to be the way you should
I
come
thought it
out.
was perfect.
That's fine.
I am recusing myself.
So the chairs, hello, Rachel, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Thank you. I'll come get you as soon as we're done with this one. And are you going to take the chair at this point, Eric?
I think Ned's
Oh,
got
Ned's-
it. Ned's
okay.
got it.
But,
You're going to chair this portion of the meeting?
I guess.
Timing couldn't have been more perfect, huh?
I guess we're going on to number 1 Cookman Street. Am I supposed to?
Up to the chair's discretion.
Sure.
I believe there was a motion and a second, but no vote on that last one.
Was there a vote? A motion,
There was a
second vote?
motion and a second, but no vote.
She'll be back in. We can vote when she gets back in. Or can't we?
I thought there was a vote. Let me grab her and just clear it up. They're sitting here,
Get
they
it
want to
done
see
now.
it.
Let's get it done now.
Okay, that's done.
Lake Street is next.
We've done that. It's
Nope, not at all.
okay, 1 Cookman.
Okay. The following is the report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced requests is to be heard before the commission on Monday, July 22nd, 2019. On June 17, 2019, the applicant submitted a request to remove one 10-inch diameter evergreen tree located on the city right-of-way. The tree is in fair to good condition, but it is located in the critical root zone of adjacent specimen oak. The tree appears to have been planted by the previous homeowner without the prior permission of the city. It's my opinion that the removal of the tree would benefit the overall health of the adjacent trees. As per city code, Parks and Shade Tree Commission has the authority to permit the removal of this tree. 253.12 maintenance, no person shall plant, spray, preserve, prune, remove, cut above ground, or otherwise disturb any tree on any street or municipal-owned property without first receiving permission from the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. Any tree removed from municipal-owned property must be replaced unless otherwise authorized by the Park and Shade Tree Commission.
I have no questions. I go by it all the time. I think the pine tree's in horrible condition myself, but
There we go.
Would the chair entertain a motion?
I move that we permit them to take
Actually,
this
since
tree
you're
down.
chairing, let's have a motion from one of the members, since you're chairing at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want me to do it? Go ahead.
Yeah, I move that we grant the approval for removal of the tree
Can I interrupt with or without replanting?
without replanting.
Second.
Call for a vote? Aye.
Aye.
Done. Let me get my,
There goes the Christmas tree.
right?
I'm ready if you guys are. What's next?
7 Columbia.
The following is the report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced requests that is to be heard before the commission on Monday, July 22nd, 2019. On June 25th, 2019, the applicant submitted a request to remove one multi-stem crabapple tree located on city right-of-way along 2nd Street. The tree is in fair condition, and there are other newly planted adjacent trees. Previously, on June 25th, 2018, the commission approved the removal of 2 wild cherries adjacent to this property and required 1 replacement tree. The property owner has since fulfilled that requirement and additional planting requirements as related to the removal of trees for a new home and pool. As per City Code, Parks and Shade Tree Commission has authority to permit the removal of this tree. 253.12 maintenance, C, no person shall plant, spray, preserve, prune, remove, cut above ground, or otherwise disturb any tree on any street or municipal-owned property without first receiving permission from the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. Any tree removed from municipal-owned property must be replaced unless otherwise authorized by the Parks and Shade Tree Commission.
Well, I would say, my opinion again, I think they're in horrible shape. That tree is in horrible shape.
It actually looks the best it's looked in a couple of years, to tell you the truth.
And there's a couple of old dogwoods that are there that's kind of interfering with them. So I think those older dogwoods would do better if they were gone.
And there's a couple, like I said, a couple of new
I was
trees.
impressed that they planted some substantial oak trees
Yes, they
along the
did
side, which I was very impressed with that because I hadn't really noticed.
really nice landscaping there.
So,
Are we saying that they can just remove
remove the mulberry tree, yeah,
Crabapple.
crabapple, just
Crabapple.
remove it?
yes.
No replanting.
Second?
Was that a
Is
motion?
that a formal motion?
Sure. Why not? Move it along.
Okay, and vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. '22 Oak.
Okay, last one. The following is a report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced request that is to be heard before the commission on Monday, July 22nd, 2019. The applicant for 22 Oak Avenue had submitted a request to remove 2 6 to 18-inch diameter maple trees located between the sidewalk and street along Oak Avenue. 1 tree must be removed for the new home's driveway. Both trees were likely planted by a previous homeowner and are invasive species. It's my opinion that the tree should be removed and replaced since there's a wide right-of-way and no overhead utilities. As per City Code, Parks and Shade Tree Commission has authority to permit the removal of this tree. 253.12 maintenance, no person shall plant, spray, preserve, prune, remove, cut above ground, or otherwise disturb any tree on any street or municipal-owned property without first receiving permission from the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. Any tree removed from municipal-owned property must be replaced unless otherwise authorized by the Parks and Shade Tree Commission.
Are you saying they have to replace both trees or just 1 tree?
They could probably fit 2, but 1 easily, because they'll have probably like 15 feet out of 50 cut away for the driveway, and then we also have a couple other trees in kind of the front setback, but I think 1 would probably be appropriate.
Right, so the plat shows, but even though it's not, there's no verbiage, but on what you just read, it says a 3-inch red bud and a 3-inch river birch. Is that what's to be planted or what's being proposed to be planted?
On the
On the plat, yeah, on the plan.
Well, what's on their actual property, I don't know if that matters I mean, in terms of this, it's,
These are listed as 3-inch deciduous to be added in 2 spots, and there's lines that go off the diagram into state a 3-inch red bud and a 3-inch rubber birch. So that was my question as well. It looks, are we to assume that 2 trees are going to be planted on the property?
One's right where
Based
the
on this,
driveway is, so that can't
But
be.
these are going to be removed.
right, these are removed, but these are to be added. There's 2.
Yeah, just if you could provide some clarification, that'd be great.
Yes, we are also, I'm Mary Peck, owner of 22 Oak, and we, in order to mitigate the removal of a tree on our property, we agreed to plant these 2 trees that are indicated on the plan. And as far as the 2 maples on the city property, we only need to remove the one that's in the way of the driveway. Ms. Lingo had told us they were both invasive species and that, you know, it might be a good idea to remove both, but we did not realize that there was any requirement for replacement planting. So we would not want to, we could leave the one maple tree. It's not going to interfere with what we're doing. But we are planting 2 trees already as part of the mitigation for the.
I see, that's separate, that's why it wasn't
Yeah.
mentioned in this.
Yes, because that's to deal with their private property and tree removal permits to
Gotcha,
build
thank
the
you.
new home.
That clarifies it for me.
So you're suggesting you could leave the one maple here?
The one on the east side, we don't have to remove that.
Okay.
Ms. Lingo, you mentioned both are they're the same species are considered invasive species.
Yes, I mean, I personally, professionally am fine with them both being removed.
Thank you.
But it only necessitates one.
Thank you. I know.
Well, they're already in bad shape. But it would be nice to have plant a tree there that was going to be, turn into a decent size, because that street's fairly nicely shaded.
Yeah.
Except for right there. So.
Well,
not-
there's
not your
there's a
only
big
one, but-
pine right behind if you look at the plan, the silver maple on the east side of the street. So that area does have that big pine right there, and then the other pine is right behind the other one. So there is some shade right there on that part of the street.
Yeah.
Well, considering what the arborist, you know, invasive species, we don't need more of, and reduce them. So I'm a big believer that certainly we should allow removal of both. Now, the question comes down to whether we would like to require them to plant one
Yes.
away from the driveway, you know, your new driveway. We can require you, it's certainly nice of you to be agreeable, amenable with that. Would you, if we ask you to do so, order you to do so, you would work with the arborist to come up with a tree or a cost?
Between the sidewalk and the street.
Yeah, between the sidewalk and the street to replace one of those in the
Well,
city.
if we were going to plant one between the sidewalk and the street, then we would have to remove the one that we don't need to remove, because the other one's where the driveway is going to be, so we could not plant
Right, certainly.
one there. So then we would have to remove both trees and then plant one where the second one was. So it seems like that's a lot of expense for us when we really didn't even need to remove the second tree, but and would be even willing to withdraw that part of our request if it was going to create a lot of cost to us.
So why don't we just make a motion to have the one removed by this, where the driveway will go, right?
Right.
Coming off the street, but leave the one that's in place
I
today.
can't support that, but maybe you have enough votes for that. I would
That's
ju-
what she's kind of
Right, I
suggesting.
would just as soon approve the removal as it's for the 2 invasive species without a replanting on that very shady, beautiful street as it is today. That's what I would support.
So you're not supporting that she would replace the one,
No,
just take them both out?
take them both out.
And is there a fee?
Is there a fee? No, in lieu of anything?
Right.
No, I don't believe so, no. I would not recommend a fee.
Well,
Kevin Peck, I own the property. It seems to me to be unfair to make us take out the tree that's not by the driveway. The tree is fine. I understand it's an invasive species, but we're not required to take out invasive species.
No, but you've applied for 2, and that's the application before us that is under appeal. So we're considering both as you applied for.
but if they want to withdraw one, are they not allowed to do that, Glenn?
I'm sure there's a
We get-
process for that.
Do they have to reapply?
But the application we have before us is appeal for removal of the 2. So
Permit the removal of the 2.
That's correct.
We have to remove the one by the driveway, but I don't think we're firm on removing the other one, which is fine.
Yeah, generally you have to decide the application that's before you, and the application is for both trees. I think there is some ability to be flexible and talk through what's the appropriate outcome, but both trees are on the table.
I'm going to make a motion, and I would move that we grant the permit to remove both maples, and that there be required no mitigation for removal of these two public trees.
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Well, just to be clear, just if you approve removing the two, doesn't mean that they have, I can issue a permit to remove 27 trees and they can only remove one. So just because you approve two doesn't mean they,
I understand.
okay, all right, just making sure.
I understand that completely.
Gotcha.
But they can decide if they want that tree dropping
Okay.
volunteers in their yard and growing like weeds. That's up to them.
Does that also mean if they decide not to remove that second tree 2 years or 5 years down the road, they can do it without coming back?
No, the permit is only valid for a limited amount of time, like 6 months.
It's their choice. That's the application before us.
Are you asking that we alter this application so that you don't need to come back?
No, I think that I was satisfied with the recommendation that I've heard about giving us permission, and then we have 1 year to decide, is it 1 year? And then if we don't, we
6
have
months,
to
I think
come
she said.
back.
Yeah, it gives you time.
Okay, all right.
The flexibility.
But part of your motion is not to replace the one tree that they are in
That's
question.
correct. Yeah, in front of the driveway.
I'd actually like to see a replacement in that one
Well,
area.
I would too, but we can't make them do that. In this case, since it's on city property.
The provision of the code, I think, Liz, I think it's in your report even,
Yeah.
they need to replace it unless you all grant the approval to not have to replace it. So, yeah.
So I think we do want
I
them to
think,
replace it.
okay, I think they should replace one of them.
In their yard or on public land?
I
Should be
guess
in
their
public.
choice. I would like it on public land. I'd like it between the sidewalk and the street.
Replace the
A
one
healthy,
that's coming out.
good tree that will grow and
Okay, well, if you permit me to modify
Go ahead.
my motion. I move that we grant the authorization of removal of the two Norway maples, and that they be required to mitigate through planting of one acceptable native species tree to be worked out with the arborist on public land.
I'll second that.
Vote? No.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
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 Do you understand exactly what we passed?
I do understand, and it's, I'm standing here thinking that I'm probably going to withdraw the request to move this second maple, because the reason why that was in there in the first place.
Ma'am, if you permit me, it's not about the second maple. You're approved for both.
Right,
This has to do with any one you take down.
okay,
If you take down two, you still only have to plant one. You take down one, you only have to plant one.
right.
That's what,
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
yes, ma'am.
Before we leave that, I sense that she still has a question. Do you still have a question? Let's at least have her.
Well, I just wanted to say
Share.
for
Go ahead.
clarification that we did not ask the arborist for permission to remove that eastern maple. And it was her suggestion and idea that it would be good because it was a native species, invasive species. But with the understanding that we had no legal requirement to remove anything on city property. So we don't care about that tree, but we threw it in there thinking on the, I guess, unfortunate belief that it wouldn't be a big deal. So now coming here today, it sounds like we're asking for two trees and we really only wanted one. And so now we did not anticipate that there would be a mitigation just for this one tiny straggly silver maple that's on our property, and I have nothing against planting nice trees, but it's just the cost to us that we felt we would like to avoid.
Let me ask it a different way, just to be clear. So and you don't have to comment on this if you don't, because you've already made your decision, but if you were to only have required one of the maples to come down, the one that is required to come down because of the driveway, would you still have required a mitigation tree?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's the sense of the group here, I think.
All right, can we go back to some minutes?
Is that right?
April 26th, since there's 3 of us who were there, Ned was not.
Ready to approve them?
One, except Glenn, help me out.
So you've already approved, I'm sorry, so,
We already approved the
and
April.
Marcia can't vote on these ones still, so she's passing the gavel to Ned. Ned's gonna, is Ned able to vote on these?
Wasn't there
So
either.
you're passing the gavel to Eric, and Eric,
There's only
right, so.
Eric and Rachel, because Priscilla was the third.
Right, so the 2 of you are recusing. For purposes of a quorum, there's still enough of you here, but the only voting members are these 2. So we need at least their 2 votes to approve them.
So, is there a motion to accept the minutes of May 20th, 2019?
Yes.
And you can second in this instance.
Seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 They're approved.
Minutes are approved.
Then you only need 2 to approve.
When you're in this instance, this is a unique circumstance where you've got 2 members recusing, but you still have a quorum. So then it's called the rule of necessity. You don't have enough to do a quorum of membership. So the rule of necessity is the voting members who are able to vote, and it does it.
Okay, so May 20th?
Oh, May 20th, I make a
Us.
motion to,
We just approved the May 20th
yeah, we
minutes.
did do that.
And the April 26th minutes were officially approved earlier. So those are approved, Marcia.
May 20th. All right. And now I don't have today's agenda.
So you're on to Liz's report, if she's got one. So
on
you're-
to-
I think, right?
City Arborist report.
Yes, last time I didn't do it because I hadn't figured out our new computer system. But this time I have. So the only figure I really give you is the amount of permits issued in the last month, and that is 13. Okay? And that is the end.
Else for the good of the
When you say the number of permits, is that
I'd ask a
13
question.
trees or 13 permits? There could be multiple trees.
Multiple trees.
Okay.
Multiple trees, sorry.
Rachel has a question?
I do have just a general question. As it relates to the dollars that we've been collecting for city use, right, from mitigation fees, is there a report or a schedule of plantings that are being done at any time for
Well,
2019?
Not in the summer, but
No, not in the summer. I'm just asking, in 2019, is there a report? I
I-
don't think I've seen one.
no, it would just be part of the budget, honestly. That's
But you
what
don't report
it's-
that back out to the group with the location and the type of tree?
No.
Can we get that?
Going forward, yes.
Okay.
If you
I
so
also had a
wish.
question for the arborist. So, Liz, we've discussed in the past, looking at the procedure to expand the list of what trees or species might be planted on private property and public property. Can you explain that process to me and where we might be?
It's with the Law Oversight Committee. So I made that recommendation, 3 years ago when I first started.
I see.
So it's with them.
Did you actually recommend trees, though? I'm sorry.
No, I never drew up a list of recommended allowance, like the actual expanded list. No, I just recommended that we consider expanding it outside of just
So can this
30 native
Can
trees.
this committee, or maybe this committee, ask you, the arborist, to inquire with them as to when we and the citizens might be able to have a expanded list?
I think part of the issue there is that the Law Oversight Committee is looking at the tree ordinance pretty much as a package deal. And I've always thought that there's chunks that you could take out of something like that. A list of approved trees seems like something that's easily segregatable, and you could say, let's bring this before the commissioners and see if they'll approve it. So maybe the message from this body should be to the Law Oversight Committee, can you please take this piece out, because we've been handcuffed a little bit as to what trees are.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Actually, a little bit bigger question might be, can we get a briefing on some of the issues that they're looking at within this ordinance? We might have some feedback for them.
I'm sure if you contacted the chair of that committee, he'd be willing to either have one of you come speak at his meetings or come speak at yours, if that's appropriate.
Right, so Hoyt Decker is the chair of that committee. If somebody'd be willing to take on contacting him, I mean, you're both kind of lateral committees, so it's not as if you can summon them to come to you, and they can't summon you to come to them, but you can very kindly reach out to each other and say, we think we have joint interests in what's going on with the tree code. Can we meet in a public forum?
Chair of our committee want to do that?
That's what you get for being the chair today, Marcia.
One more meeting.
Well, but it also should be noted that he reports, monthly to the commissioners?
He does.
So he's been giving reports once a month for the past year and a half on their
Haven't been involved
progress.
in that at all. I mean,
Well,
it would be nice if we could be.
Whenever the commissioners' meeting or schedule, it's right on the agenda, so I'm sure.
Although his reports are on basically everything they're working on, so I mean, this would be more specific to the
Yeah,
tree
it's a
ordinance.
lot.
Well, I suggest, first of all, we don't have our full complement of members today, and why don't we think about what we've discussed in regard to the committee and the list and the changes to the ordinance in general, and maybe we can put it on to discuss as old business on next month's agenda if all of us are here, as to what we might want to do, if anything, to prod them along or be informed.
And will you take a note, or maybe you are taking a note, to get that on their agenda next month? Thanks.
Adjourned.
Thank you all.